Mi gente, my friends, we got to talk about convicted felon Donald Trump's latest attempts to impose a travel ban on people that don't look like him and that he doesn't want in our country. Let's not be fooled by the excuses provided in his latest proclamation. The proclamation is racist. He puts it under the guise of national security. Will it be constitutional muster? I'm worried, candidly, about how this is going to play out, considering the Supreme Court precedent from 2018 on this similar issue of a travel ban. We'll get into that in just a minute, but I wanted to talk about this latest proclamation because on its face, it's pretty disgustingly racist and xenophobic. I know that we've come to expect that from the felon Donald Trump, and yet when you see it so egregiously and grossly in your face in this way, it's really hard to stomach, people. So yesterday, June 4th, 2025, Donald Trump issued the following proclamation. It's entitled, "Restricting the Entry of Foreign Nationals to Protect the United States from Foreign Terrorists and Other National Security and Public Safety Threats." Again, people, do not be fooled by the title. Do not be fooled by the excuses. It's just racism, just codified in a proclamation. But let's kind of get into the details so that we understand more greatly about what is at stake and what's going on. The problem with Donald Trump's proclamation when it comes to us being able to fight it in courts is the following. He learned, almost like the Terminator, right? In that movie, there's an evolution of the machines. There's an evolution of the evil. And in this instance, Donald Trump has learned through his failures in Trump 1.0, when there were a flurry of legal challenges to his travel ban attempts in his first administration. He has learned, because what he's done now is in this proclamation, he's included language that's probably going to help him get across the finish line. And that language includes the following. He says that he, quote, directed the Secretary of State in coordination with the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the Director of National Intelligence to identify countries throughout the world for which vetting and screening information is so deficient as to warrant a full or partial suspension on the admission of nationals from those countries. After completing that process, the Secretary of State determined that a number of countries remain deficient with regards to screening and vetting. Many of these countries have also taken advantage of the United States in their exploitation of our visa system and their historic failure to accept back their removable nationals. Now, the reason why I want to highlight that language, amongst other within this proclamation, is the following. When on its face, the proclamation looks like it has a neutral national security or public safety rationale, then that is what the Supreme Court is going to be looking for. That's what the courts are going to be looking for. Even though you and I both know that the underlying sentiment is racial animus, even though you and I both know that the reality is Trump just doesn't want black and brown people coming into the United States, if on the face of it, it appears to be neutral, then that sometimes will win the day for you in court. And then when he includes this language that he did his research, that he did his homework, that he's relied upon people like the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the Director of National Intelligence, putting aside the reality that that is Marco Rubio, Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem, and Tulsi Gabbard, and those are all his lackeys and sycophants and ass kissers, putting aside that reality, if he's asked these people to do the work to be able to justify the national security and public safety rationales behind this proclamation, then that becomes a problem for purposes of challenging it in court. So let's talk about the facts. This proclamation does a full restriction and limit to the entry of nationals from the following 12 countries: Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. Partial restriction, partial limits for the following 7 countries: Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. According to the proclamation, the restrictions distinguish between but apply to both the entry of immigrants and non-immigrants. This order takes effect on Monday, June 9th, 2025. And there was no clarity provided other than the excuses that felon Trump put within this proclamation as to why he wanted to restrict admission and entry to the United States. Putting that aside, there really wasn't even some clarity on why those particular countries were selected. I mean, I'm sure if you tasked your yes men and yes women to go find you stuff to justify your behavior and conduct, you could do it for any country at this point. But these are the countries that I just told you. There's 12 that have full restrictions and 7 that have partial restrictions. Last year, the State Department issued about 170,000 total visas to citizens of the 12 countries that were subject to this ban. In Trump's first term in 2017, Trump's travel ban targeted 7 Muslim majority countries. And interestingly, this time around, 2 of those countries, Syria and Iraq, were not named in this latest proclamation from yesterday, June 4th, 2025. So one bullshit excuse that was given by Donald Trump as to why he was issuing this proclamation was the following. He said, quote, "The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them," end quote. And yet what's fascinating, right? Because, we have to traffic in facts and evidence. We have to traffic in the currency of truth, because if we don't, then it's just going to spiral into just this cesspool of disinformation and misinformation and lies, which is a Trump specialty. What's fascinating about that statement from Donald Trump is the man who's now been arrested and charged for that horrific attack in Boulder, Colorado, he's Egyptian. And yet, interestingly, Egypt is not on the list of countries that are fully restricted or even limited in any partial way. So among those that are exempted from this travel ban are green card holders, dual citizens, refugees who have already been granted asylum here in the United States, and athletes and coaches and their families who are traveling for major sports events. Because, gosh, you can't come to the U.S. to study or to live, have a job, or build a new life. But shit, if you're coming here to play a sport, we don't got a problem. Why? Money. Okay. Now, remember how I mentioned how Syria and Iraq, which were one of the original Trump 1.0 Muslim ban countries, how they're not included in this latest round of travel bans? Well, let's talk about Syria, because you guys need to know this. Because there are no coincidences in the very transactional land of Donald Trump. Just yesterday, the United States announced that it is scaling down its military presence in Syria from 8 bases to just 1. Unexpectedly, the United States has also lifted its sanctions on Syria, according to Tom Barrack, who, if you guys have been following kind of the Trump world of intrigue and co-conspirators, Tom Barrack is the special envoy who is the U.S. special envoy to Syria. He was indicted, 7-count indictment relating to his unlawful efforts to advance the interests of the United Arab Emirates in the U.S. at the direction of senior UAE officials by influencing the foreign policy positions of the Trump campaign in the 2016 U.S. presidential election, and subsequently the foreign policy positions of the U.S. government in the incoming Trump administration, as well as indicted for seeking to influence public opinion in favor of UAE interests. Folks, that's not my language. That's a language from the U.S. Attorney's Office when they indicted Tom Barrack. Now, he went to trial and he was found not guilty, such as our judicial system at play. However, Barrack also was a part of the inauguration committee where it was $100-something million. But anyway, so he's a special envoy to Syria. Trump unexpectedly announced last week that he's lifting the sanctions on Syria at the behest of whom? Saudi Arabia's crown prince. And yet, according to the United States Department of State, since December 29th of 1979, Syria has been on the list of state-sponsored terrorist nations. You want to protect the United States. You're doing this proclamation. We're including all these countries because you're looking out for national security and you're looking out for the public safety of Americans, but you don't include Syria, a state-sponsored terrorist or country, according to your own Department of State. Since 1979, Syria's been on that list, and yet you don't do that, Donald Trump. Why? Because the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia told you to lift sanctions. Again, this SOB is so transactional. It's so apparent. So let's cut to the chase now. Why do I tell you why I have a concern about the legal challenges that are going to come against this latest proclamation in this latest version of Trump's travel ban? Well, because of what happened in June of 2018, the United States Supreme Court, from the Trump 1.0 travel ban, as I said, it traveled all the way up from the court system and it made it to the Supreme Court. June 26, 2018, the Supreme Court of the United States issued its 5-4 decision. Chief Justice John Roberts delivered the majority opinion, and it says here, and if you'll recall, it was the state of Hawaii, individual plaintiffs, and a Muslim group that challenged Trump's travel ban that limited travel from predominantly Muslim countries. And the argument that was made was it's religious animus by Donald Trump, and there is no legitimate national security concerns by Donald Trump to limit their ability to travel to the United States. In that 5-4 vote, the conservative bench of the Supreme Court said that the United States has a president and his power to secure the country's borders is not undermined by Trump's own history of, quote, incendiary statements about the dangers that Muslims pose to the United States. Okay. Traveling down this path again with you makes me very angry. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts said that Donald Trump had ample statutory authority to make national security decisions in the space of immigration. He wrote, quote, "The issue before us is not whether to denounce the statements, the racially motivated, prejudicial ones that Trump had made. It is instead the significance of those statements in reviewing a presidential directive neutral on its face." Remember that phrase, people, neutral on its face. Addressing a matter within the core of executive responsibility. In doing so, we must consider not only the statements of a particular president, but the authority of the presidency itself. Chief Justice John Roberts, in that majority opinion, echoed Stephen Miller, stating that Trump's top immigration advisor, Stephen Miller, was right. That there is deference to the president in every clause when it comes to the provision of immigration law that allows the president to suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens. Chief Justice Roberts said that Trump's proclamation, and again, remember, this is Trump 1.0 travel ban, that his proclamation, when viewed in isolation, was neutral on its face and justified by the national security concerns that were articulated by Trump. Roberts wrote, quote, "It is expressly premised on legitimate purposes, the prevention of the entry of nationals who cannot be adequately vetted and inducing other nations to improve their practices." Justices Kennedy, Thomas, Alito joined that majority opinion. And that is from 2018 in the Supreme Court. But don't think the dissent took it lying down, because they definitely did not. Justice Sonia Sotomayor said, "No matter how much the government tried to launder Donald Trump's statements, all of the evidence points in one direction." Sotomayor said that her colleagues on the bench in that majority opinion unquestionably accepted Trump's national security claims. Just took it on its face, even though the evidence suggested otherwise. May she rest in peace, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg joined in Justice Sotomayor's dissent. Sotomayor wrote, quote, "The question is whether a government actor exhibited tolerance and neutrality in reaching his decision that affects individuals' fundamental religious freedom." Sotomayor said this decision was no better than Korematsu versus the United States. For those of you who recall, that's the 1944 decision that basically gave the green light for the detention of Japanese Americans and others during World War II. this decision, this Trump decision from 2018 that we've been talking about, it actually officially overturned Korematsu. So yay for freaking, I don't know how many years it took, 50 freaking something, 60 years to get there. But anyway, but Sotomayor says, yeah, great. Thanks for overturning Korematsu, which should have been done. But by upholding Trump's travel ban, the court merely replaces one gravely wrong decision with another. In another dissent, Justice Stephen Breyer, joined by Justice Elena Kagan, said Trump should be allowed to carry out a travel ban, but he said that you need to have religious tolerance. Now, I'm going to say this for what it's worth. I'm going to say, look, so we're going to see the legal challenges and they're going to come, but they're not going to, maybe they'll come right now. But a difference between what happened back in 2018 with Trump 1.0 travel ban is it was really driven by an argument of religious animus. And so you have the discussion of making sure that you don't punish one religion and amplify or uplift another. And another thing is, as we talked about here, the language in this current proclamation from Trump was stronger when it comes to this idea of national security and the vetting of countries and the failure of those countries to vet the people that are trying to come to the United States. And so it's almost like Trump learned that they needed to make that language stronger to be able to justify on its face. Remember this phrase, neutral on its face? Well, it's neutral on its face, right? It doesn't call out religions. This proclamation only talks about national security and actually has a detailed description on these countries of what they've done or haven't done to be able to vet their citizens before they come to the United States. But the other thing is, look, sometimes we know that a law or a proclamation or an executive order just sucks and it's bad, and we know it's bad, and we know that the reasoning behind it is evil and racist. But sometimes we have to wait and see how it's actually rolled out and implemented. And even though that's frustrating to hear from me, I tell you all the time here at the Katie Phang News Channel, we're going to manage your expectations. We're going to let you be so well read in and so knowledgeable that you understand why something's happening. And in this instance, you may not see a flurry of litigation right now, but you may see it when they actually implement these bans. We need to watch them and see, how are these bans being applied? Are they being applied uniformly in a way that is not constitutional or is constitutional? I mean, we're going to have to wait and see how this is happening. And I hate to tell you guys we have to wait and see, but in this instance, I think that's where we find ourselves. We have to wait and see. So be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. Let's just continue to hope for the best, but we need to expect the worst. And we are seeing the worst in this Trump 2.0 travel ban. And let's see what happens in our court system. I'll see you guys on the other side. Katie Phang here. The truth matters now more than ever. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching.